Here we have the Centaur tank, and this is the finished in-game shot of it, textured, low poly. Basically, the concept for the Centaur is they wanted to have a new vehicle in the game. They wanted it to be very powerful, but they also wanted it to have kind of a very rowdy type of feel to it. So the designer's original concept was a monster truck. So you get that visceral, like you can run over anything. You can run over cars, you can run over trees, you can really smash through stuff, combined with the top half of a tank. So that's where the original idea came, and then obviously Jay did his work on the concept.
Okay, so this was the initial ideas for the Centaur, probably an hour working here. The idea got kind of passed down from Cliffy that he wanted kind of this monster truck type vehicle that you would charge through the woods, knocking over trees, bouncing everywhere. And it happened at the time that I was into RC cars, the little gas-powered RC cars. And I loved the way the suspension worked and everything on them. So I started kind of working from that with keeping in mind that these giant tires and having an idea that you're going to be running stuff over and just crushing things and bouncing all over the place. Trying to have fun with it, but not draw exactly what you would expect. All right, so this is obviously I took a picture of an RC car and just drew straight over it with the bouncy tires and everything like that. And when I fired this out to Cliffy and the rest of the guys, they were on board for it, but it still wasn't working right because he was looking more for a monster truck kind of thing, and I was going for the RC car. And I was having a hard time kind of finding a middle ground because the idea of a monster truck tank just wasn't sitting well in my mind. So it took some beating to get past this point. And again, I'm still working with kind of the RC car idea, but I'm trying to change things up a little bit. I got this idea of maybe it looking like a hunched over bull. So I put these big tires in the front and gave it almost horns and kind of gave it this lowered kind of stance where it looks like it's kind of growling at you or something like that. Also, I thought it'd be neat if it was kind of front wheel drive, so if the rear end looked kind of lighter, then it could be swinging around behind the front wheels. We still weren't there, but we were getting closer. All right, so again, you can tell that the iterations are getting closer to what the final image is. I was still fighting the monster truck thing. I wasn't completely on board for it. It just wasn't making sense in my mind. I wanted something that felt faster than a monster truck. Everything I've seen in monster trucks, they're these slow, lumbering, kind of bounce everywhere. I was still thinking kind of race car, flying around corners and stuff. So I added bigger tires and some tread and stuff, but still wasn't getting it right. So finally, after getting beat on and this is probably a week into the design, I went ahead and threw some giant monster truck tires on the thing and kind of tractored it up a little bit. I did a lot of work on the turret at this point. I actually took the sniper rifle I'd done for Gears 1. I really liked the shape of the barrel and I thought it fit well on this tank. At this point, everyone was happy with it, and it was one of those designs where if it was left up to me, I might have done something different, but I was really happy that they kept pushing on me to go this way with it, because now in game it just looks great.
Here we are at the finished high poly model. So this is when I've already gone in, taken Jay's concept and base poly, built all the geometry, added all the finite details, tried to stay as true to the concept as possible, but then taking it a little bit further, researching real-life tanks and monster trucks, and making sure, obviously, that it functions correctly. The other thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to keep in mind that the view that the player would be seeing it from most of the time. So I definitely wanted to make sure that the back end of the Centaur had lots of cool kind of mechy biddles going on, that you would be able to see the suspension being animated, see the engine, and just lots of cool details. So it was visually interesting to view, not only from the front angles, but especially from the back. And here's a lower kind of eye-level shot of the back, showing the suspension and all the details that got put into the high poly model. Whenever I'm doing mechanical stuff, I always try to ensure that everything functions, everything fits, everything moves correctly. There's room for everything to actually function as it would in real life. Obviously, we're not going so far as to engineer it, but it definitely has to facilitate the necessary gameplay, the physics setup, the rig, and all the elements that go together to make it function in game. Here we have an in-engine screenshot. So this is a lower poly version. Sometimes we have to go in and create optimized versions, and this is just showing the kind of top tank portion being blown off. So within the gameplay element of this section, you can get hit multiple times with Nemesis or other explosives, and that'll disable the tank and blow it up, and so this is demonstrating the rigging of that. The Centaur low poly is still a little bit higher poly than most of the other assets for the game because it is a very large vehicle. So to maintain the consistency of detail, sometimes you have to put in quite a bit of information, even in the low poly. So you might have a character that's 10,000 polys. The vehicle, if it's standing next to it, has to be in the 30,000 poly range. But you can't put a ton of those in a level without having an impact performance. So whenever I'm doing low polys, I always have to go in and create multiple versions that are a little bit lower poly than each previous one, so that if you've got a Centaur that's in a fleet of a whole army of them and they're way off in the background, that one's lower level of detail, but you can't really tell because it's so far off in the distance. Here's another view of the LOD, and you can see that we're losing quite a bit of information. If you look, we've lost a lot of the suspension chunks, we've lost a lot of the more finite details, and that's one of the more challenging aspects of creating those LODs, because you want to keep the silhouette, but you definitely have to just continue to make it lower and lower poly count so that it works in engine for all the needs of the level designers. Here's the final shot in game. This is one of the shots where you're coming into the assault level, and basically you've got a ton of Centaurs coming in, a ton of grind lifts, and of course the King Raven choppers flying off in the distance.